Today is Friday, September 20th, 2024. Where can I get some eggs? It's an age-old question. There are essentially three places you can find a fresh egg donor to make your baby. First is your fertility clinic, second is your surrogacy agency, and third is an external egg bank. Fertility clinic is the cheapest because there is no agency fee and perhaps no legal fee either. All you're paying is the donor compensation, which is on the low end. Plus, most egg donors signed up with your clinic are local, so you're not paying crazy travel costs to get them there. The first woman I picked was getting only $7,000 per cycle, and it would go up $1,000 each time she donated eggs, not to exceed $11,000. That is cheap. There are women who get $10,000 for doing this just once. Second is your surrogacy agency. They cost more because they do charge an agency fee, but like the fertility clinic, they're typically local, so the travel costs you pay are minimized. The donor compensation is probably comparable to a fertility clinic. The second woman I picked turned out to be my number one choice, and her compensation was $10,000, but she was worth it. I was third in line and waited 5 months and almost literally ran into her at the clinic in February when I was there for my medical screening. But she had complications in her first cycle and decided to not continue. Your third source is an external egg bank, and there are tons of them. These cost the most. The agency fee easily runs $8,000 to $10,000. Then there are screening costs. Then there are travel costs because they're all over the country. Compensation can easily range from $10,000 all the way up to $30,000 for a repeat egg donor in high demand. Their profiles tend to reflect a very different kind of woman, someone college educated with a career perhaps. Although in all three of these models, the woman is being paid by you to go through this process. She is not being paid for her eggs. If you get no eggs from her, she still gets paid. The only model in this third group that is an outlier that I found is a company called Co-Fertility because they don't provide compensation. Instead, they find women who are busy with their careers or education and want to delay motherhood but don't want to run into the situation where their eggs are no longer good because they're too old. So, in this model, the intended parents pay for everything as in the other models, but instead of getting money, the egg donor gets to keep half of the eggs. Her half of the eggs are frozen so that she can start her own family somewhere down the road. Their marketing material claims this is less, quote, icky, unquote, which I guess is one way to look at it, but it also means your children are virtually guaranteed to have half-siblings on the planet, who are her children, and they may or may not ever meet. Many of these women are open to disclosed donation, which just means they're willing to provide self-identifying information so that they can be tracked down. But the details of how much interaction they'll agree to isn't fully ironed out until the contract you have with them is written and signed. Sorry, I know I keep looking over because I actually have notes this time. The other odd thing about this model is that they may have a much more, or actually they do have a much more vested interest in the outcome. If they produce no eggs or too few eggs, they'll be bummed, as will I. But in the more prevalent models, the egg donor just takes her money and doesn't really care about how many eggs she gave you. She's just in it for the money to pay bills or school loans or whatever. What is also strange is that you're saving maybe $10,000 due to not having to pay compensation, but you get only 50% of the eggs, which may or may not be enough. And since most of these women are not repeat donors, there's no history of how many eggs they typically produce. And this can range from 10 to 40 eggs. If your goal is to have one child, it's safe to say you want about 6 eggs because not all will be mature, and then not all will result in embryos, and not all of the embryos will be chromosomally normal, and then the ones that are good may not result in a pregnancy, which means needing a few extras in case you have to attempt the transfer to the surrogate 2 or 3 times, which is how I get to the magic number of 6 by reverse engineering the process. So all of this means your co-fertility donor has to produce at least 12 eggs for you to get 6, and I have no idea what the average is, so I'm taking a big risk here just to save $10,000. With all of the other egg donors, you get all of the eggs, which is less risky. In fact, you may get way too many eggs. If you want just one child, you don't need 24 eggs. I mean, what do you do with all those unneeded embryos? And that's when you start to play God in deciding what happens to them. Now, I understand the moral dilemmas inherent in IVF, although I'm still totally against any legislation that prohibits IVF or abortion. Back to the topic. If you want 2 kids, the magic number is 12, which means you're taking an even bigger risk because the donor has to produce at least 24 eggs for you to get your 12. And once again, I have no idea what the likelihood of this happening is. With co-fertility, you can actually agree up front to do 2 cycles with the donor and either split the eggs in each cycle or set it up so that you get all the eggs in the first cycle and she gets all the eggs in the second cycle. But that's twice as much money you have to shell out. I'd rather do 1 cycle and hope that I get all of the eggs I need. So although I decided to go with co-fertility, I continue to wonder if this was the right decision. The better news is that their quote guarantee unquote feels better than what I found elsewhere. If you don't end up with a baby, they will not recharge you that upfront $8,000 coordination fee. Their frozen egg guarantee is even better. If you don't end up with a baby, you don't pay anything more to be rematched with another frozen egg donor. That's the path I first went down with them, but it got nixed because my fertility clinic is not open to accepting frozen eggs from just any external clinic. But that's a whole other story for another time. It's kind of like buying a house in a crazy housing market. You are literally competing with other intended parents for the same women. You have no idea if other people are eyeing your picks, and if you wait too long, they can just disappear overnight, which has happened to me. Also, I have found that trying to work with multiple external agencies at the same time becomes far too complicated. It's comparable to looking at houses in 3 different cities with a different realtor in each. They each have their own websites, processes, costs, and funding schedules. I looked at maybe 4 to 5 of them, landed on 2 that I seriously identified donors on, and had Zoom calls with both of them. Then I picked 1 to move forward with. Also know that the further along you get in the process, the harder it is to get your money back. So make sure you fully understand their refund policy. You can window shop all you want, but once you enter the store and put down a deposit, there will likely be restrictions as to how long that's good for before you're committed to that company. I have about $8,000 tied up right now in my egg donor bank, but I can technically still back away from them because I haven't fully matched with anyone just yet. In sum, you can get your eggs from 3 different types of places, and it's in your best interest to research all of them and determine what's right for you, whether that's your fertility clinic, surrogacy agency, or an external egg bank. Thanks for watching.